The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Dr. Hiroshi finally decided to call it a night. The research facility was practically empty at this hour, just the usual hum of machines and the occasional footsteps of security guards making their rounds. He was packing up his notes when suddenly, every alarm in the building started blaring at once. Red lights flashed across the hallway and his heart jumped into his throat. Something had gone terribly wrong in Lab 7. Hiroshi grabbed his security badge and ran. His shoes squeaked against the polished floor as he sprinted down the corridor. The containment breach protocol was something they'd drilled dozens of times, but it had never actually happened. Not until tonight. As he reached the lab door, his hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped his badge twice before the scanner finally accepted it. The observation chamber was empty. The reinforced glass door hung open, and the monitoring equipment beeped uselessly at nothing. Their visitor, the one they'd been studying for the past 3 weeks, was gone. Hiroshi's mind raced. Where could she have gone? Was she dangerous? Scared? Both? He found her 20 meters down the eastern hallway, collapsed against the wall like a broken doll. Even in distress, she was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Her skin had this strange silvery glow to it, like moonlight reflecting off water. Her hair floated around her head as if she was underwater, defying gravity in a way that made his scientific brain ache with questions. But right now, none of that mattered. She was clearly in pain. Hiroshi approached slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. Hey, it's okay. I'm here to help. His voice echoed in the empty corridor. The girl's eyes snapped open and he nearly stumbled backward. They were violet, actually violet, with pupils that contracted into vertical slits when the light hit them. She looked at him with such raw fear that he felt it in his chest. Before he could say anything else, she lunged forward and grabbed his wrist. Her grip was incredibly strong, much stronger than her thin frame suggested it should be. Her fingers were cold, almost icy, and he could feel her trembling. She was trying to speak, but the small device attached to her collar was sparking and fizzing like a broken radio. The translator. It was malfunctioning. Through the static and garbled sounds, Hiroshi caught fragments of words. Wrong. Inside. Something. Help. Her voice had this musical quality to it, like wind chimes, but it was broken with panic. She pressed her other hand against her chest, and that's when he noticed the glow under her skin was flickering irregularly, like a dying light bulb. Okay, listen to me, Hiroshi said, keeping his voice as calm as possible even though his own heart was racing. You're sick. Something is wrong inside your body, right? I need to figure out what it is. He pointed to himself, then to her, then made a scanning motion with his hands. I need to look inside you. To help, understand? The translator crackled, and whatever came out on her end made her face change color instantly. The silver of her skin deepened into a dark purple, spreading from her cheeks down her neck. Her eyes went impossibly wide, and she released his wrist like it had burned her. She scrambled backward, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. No, wait! Hiroshi held up both hands, confused by her sudden terror. I'm a doctor. Medical scan. To help you. But the translator was still glitching, and every word he said seemed to make things worse. The purple flush on her skin deepened to almost black in places, and those strange markings along her arms that usually glowed a soft blue were now flashing bright red. She started speaking rapidly in her own language, a cascade of musical notes and sounds that the broken translator turned into incomprehensible noise. Her body language, though, that was universal. She was horrified, offended, scared out of her mind, and Hiroshi had absolutely no idea what he'd said to cause this reaction. He tried again, this time miming medical equipment, pointing at the nearby lab, making exaggerated gestures of scanning and helping. But with each attempt, her distress seemed to grow. The air around her started to shimmer, and he noticed the temperature in the hallway was dropping fast. Frost began forming on the nearby windows. Was this a defense mechanism? Some kind of biological response to extreme stress? Then the secondary alarms kicked in. The facility's AI had detected unusual atmospheric changes in energy readings. Within seconds, Hiroshi heard the heavy boots of the security team pounding down the stairs. They had maybe 2 minutes before this situation went from bad to catastrophic. If security saw her like this, panicked and clearly defensive, they might treat her as a threat. They might use force. They might hurt her. Please, Hiroshi said, his voice desperate now. Please, just calm down. I'm not trying to hurt you. Something is wrong inside your body, and if we don't fix it soon, you might die. Do you understand? Die? He made a universal gesture, hand across the throat, then pointed at her chest where the flickering glow was getting weaker. For just a moment, their eyes met. In her violet gaze, he saw intelligence, understanding. And beneath all the panic and confusion, he saw something else. She knew she was dying. Whatever was wrong with her, she'd known it before the translator broke. That's why she'd escaped. She was looking for help. The security team's voices echoed down the corridor. They were getting closer. Hiroshi made a split-second decision. He pulled out his own tablet and started frantically pulling up every medical diagram he could find, every image of scanning equipment, anything that might bridge this communication gap before it was too late. For both of them. The girl pressed herself against the wall, her whole body trembling as the security team's footsteps grew louder. Hiroshi could see the conflict playing out across her face. She was trapped between her fear of him and whatever was coming down that hallway. The frost on the window spread further, creating intricate patterns that looked almost like her written language. Look at this," Hiroshi said urgently, holding up his tablet. He pulled up a 3D model of a human body, rotating it slowly. Then he swiped to show various scanning machines, X-rays, MRI images, anything medical he could find. He pointed at the images, then at her, then back at the images. "This is what I mean. Medical. Science. To help you live." She blinked, and for the first time since the translator broke, some of the terror in her eyes shifted to confusion. She tilted her head, studying the images on his screen. Her breathing was still rapid, but that deadly frost in the air stopped spreading. Hiroshi took that as a good sign and kept going. He showed her a diagram of the human circulatory system, then pointed to his own chest where his heart beat. Then he pointed to her chest where that strange flickering light pulsed under her skin. She watched him carefully, her violet eyes tracking every movement. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her hand over her own chest and nodded. Yes, she had something similar. A heart or whatever her species had that served the same purpose. Right, exactly. Hiroshi's words tumbled out faster now. He pulled up more images, showing medical procedures, doctors helping patients, scanning equipment in use. He was so focused on his tablet that he barely noticed when the security chief, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, rounded the corner with 3 armed guards behind her. "Dr. Hiroshi, step away from the subject immediately." Tanaka's voice was sharp and professional, but there was an edge of real concern there. The guards raised their weapons, though thankfully they weren't pointing them directly at anyone yet. They were loaded with tranquilizers, but Hiroshi had no idea if those would even work on her alien biology. They might accidentally kill her instead. "Wait, please." Hiroshi moved to stand between the guards and the girl. "There's been a misunderstanding. A translation error. She's not attacking anyone. She's sick. She came looking for help, and when I tried to explain I needed to scan her, the translator broke and I think it told her something completely different." The girl's eyes darted between all the humans now surrounding her. The purple flush on her skin deepened again, but this time Hiroshi recognized it wasn't just fear. It was embarrassment too. Whatever she thought he'd said, it had mortified her completely. Tanaka lowered her hand, signaling the guards to hold position. She was smart, one of the best security chiefs the facility had ever had. She could read a situation better than most. "Explain, quickly." "Something's wrong with her internally," Hiroshi said, the words spilling out. "She was trying to tell me through the broken translator. I said I needed to look inside her, to scan her, medically, but I think it translated as something else, something that in her culture must be extremely personal or inappropriate." Tanaka's eyes widened slightly as understanding dawned. Oh no." She looked at the alien girl with new sympathy. That would explain the defensive biological response. She took a slow step forward, hands open and empty. "I'm Dr. Tanaka. Can you understand me at all?" The girl looked between them, clearly trying to make sense of the situation. The translator on her collar gave one more weak spark and then died completely with a pathetic little beep. Great. Now they had no way to communicate, at all except through gestures and hope. But then, something unexpected happened. The girl took a shaky breath and in halting, heavily accented English, she spoke directly for the first time. "Translator, I learn. Your words, little, small." She touched her chest again, her face twisted in pain. "Inside me, wrong, bad things. Make me stop living." Hiroshi's heart clenched. She'd been learning English this whole time they'd been studying her. She'd been listening, absorbing, understanding far more than they'd realized, and now she was using what little she knew to ask for help. Bad things inside, Tanaka repeated slowly, making sure each word was clear. You need medical help. A doctor to find the bad things and remove them. The girl nodded frantically, relief flooding her features. Yes, find and remove. But he say... She pointed at Hiroshi and that purple flush returned to her cheeks. She said something in her own language that sounded frustrated and flustered at the same time. Hiroshi winced. I'm so sorry. I was trying to say medical scan. Look inside with machines, not whatever you thought I meant. We're going to help you, Tanaka said firmly. She pulled out her own tablet and brought up the facility's medical bay. But we need to do this properly, with monitoring and witnesses. For everyone's protection and comfort, agreed? The girl studied Tanaka's face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. She tried to stand, but her legs buckled. The glow under her skin was barely visible now, flickering like a candle about to go out. Hiroshi caught her before she fell, and this time she didn't pull away. She was too weak, too sick, too desperate for help to let pride or fear stop her. How long? Tanaka asked quietly. How long has she been dealing with this? I don't know, Hiroshi admitted, helping support the girl's weight. But based on how fast she's deteriorating, not much longer. Whatever's inside her, it's killing her quickly. Tanaka's jaw tightened. Then we move now. Medical bay full setup and someone get me a working translator from storage. We've got 1 hour to save her life. The medical bay was the most advanced room in the entire facility, filled with equipment that looked more like something from a science fiction movie than a hospital. Bright white lights illuminated every corner, and the walls were lined with screens displaying various monitoring systems. The alien girl, who they'd learned called herself Kira through broken gestures and drawings, lay on the examination table in the center of the room. She looked so small there, so vulnerable. Hiroshi adjusted the scanning equipment while Tanaka stood by with 2 medical technicians, their hands hovering over emergency protocols just in case. Through the observation window, a dozen facility scientists watched with barely contained excitement and worry. This was unprecedented. They'd been studying Kira for weeks, but always from a distance, always non-invasively. Now they were about to get a look at her internal biology in detail. Kira, Hiroshi said gently, making sure she could see him. He held up the scanning device, a large ring-shaped piece of equipment that would move over her body without touching her. This will look inside you. No pain, no touch, just light. Understand? She nodded, but her hands gripped the edges of the table. The purple flush was gone from her skin now, replaced by a worrying pale silver that looked almost gray. Her breathing was shallow and rapid. Whatever was wrong inside her had progressed significantly, just in the time it took to get her to the medical bay. The scanners hummed to life, and the first images appeared on the screens around them. Hiroshi heard several gasps from the observation room. Kira's internal structure was both familiar and completely alien at the same time. She had organs, a circulatory system, something that looked like lungs but worked differently, and there, right in the center of her chest cavity, were not 1 but 2 hearts beating in an alternating rhythm. Fascinating, one of the technicians whispered. Her entire cardiovascular system is redundant. If one fails, the other can compensate. But Hiroshi wasn't focused on the amazing biology. He was focused on the thousands of tiny bright spots scattered throughout her body like stars in a dark sky. They were everywhere, in her organs, her blood vessels, her nervous system, and they were moving. What are those? Tanaka leaned in closer to the screen. Hiroshi enhanced the image, zooming in on one of the bright spots. His blood ran cold. Nanobots. Artificial microscopic machines. He looked at Kira, who was watching the screens with a grim understanding in her eyes. She knew. She knew they were there. Kira spoke, her voice weak but urgent. Bad people. Put inside me. Make me? She struggled to find the words in English, then gave up and made a gesture like a puppet on strings, someone controlling her movements. Control devices, Hiroshi breathed. Someone put these in her to control her actions. He felt sick. What had she been running from? What kind of people did this to someone? The scans continued, and the picture became clearer and more disturbing. The nanobots weren't just sitting idle. They were actively working their way through her system, attaching themselves to nerve clusters and major organs. About 40% of her neural pathways were already compromised. In another few hours, maybe a day at most, They would have complete control of her body. Or worse, they'd shut down her vital functions entirely. Can we remove them? Tanaka asked, her professional calm cracking slightly. I don't know, Hiroshi admitted. He pulled up analysis after analysis, running every diagnostic tool they had. They're too small to remove individually, and there are thousands of them. If we try to destroy them with electromagnetic pulses, we might damage her nervous system too. But if we don't do something, I die. Kira finished for him, her English surprisingly clear despite her weakness. I know, I run away because I die anyway. Better die free than… She made that puppet gesture again, her face twisted with disgust and fear. Hiroshi looked at the scans again, his mind racing through possibilities. There had to be a way. These nanobots were connected somehow, communicating with each other to coordinate their actions. That meant there had to be a central control hub, a main unit sending out signals to all the others. If they could find it and disable it, the rest of the nanobots might become inert. Look here, he said, pointing at a cluster of the bright spots near Kira's secondary heart. Unlike the others that were scattered randomly, these were grouped together in a specific pattern, and the signals emanating from them were stronger. This could be the central hub. If we can target this specifically, knock it out, the others might shut down. And if you're wrong, one of the technicians asked quietly. Hiroshi didn't answer because they all knew what happened if he was wrong. Kira would die on this table, far from her home, among strangers who barely understood her language. Kira reached out and touched Hiroshi's hand. Her fingers were ice cold now, and the light under her skin was barely a flicker. She looked directly into his eyes and said 3 words that hit him harder than any scientific discovery ever had. I trust you. In her language, trust was probably an even bigger concept than it was for humans. She was alone on an alien world, sick and dying, having just experienced one of the most embarrassing miscommunications of her life, with him specifically, and still she trusted him to try to save her. That meant something. That meant everything. Okay, Hiroshi said, his voice steadier than he felt. We're going to do this. Tanaka, I need the prototype electromagnetic pulse tool from Lab 3. And get me everything we have on precision medical procedures. We're going to need to support her organs manually while we shut down these nanobots. That equipment isn't tested yet, Tanaka warned. I know, but it's all we have. Hiroshi looked at Kira again. I'm going to save you. I promise. Kira smiled weakly, and for just a moment the glow under her skin brightened slightly. Hope. She was feeling hope for the first time in who knows how long. The next 3 hours were the most intense of Hiroshi's entire career. The observation room was packed now, every senior scientist in the facility watching as he and his team worked to save Kira's life. They'd set up a complex array of equipment around the examination table, each machine monitoring a different aspect of her alien biology that they were learning about in real time. The electromagnetic pulse device sat on a mobile stand next to the table, looking deceptively simple for something that held a life in its circuits. It was designed to emit a highly focused pulse that could disrupt electronic equipment at a microscopic level. In theory, it should shut down the nanobots. In theory, they'd never tested it on anything living before, let alone an alien life form they barely understood. Her secondary heart is struggling, one of the technicians called out, watching the monitors. The nanobots are concentrating their attack there. Hiroshi could see it on the scans. The tiny machines were swarming the second heart like ants on sugar, working to shut it down. If they succeeded, Kira's body would try to compensate with her primary heart alone. But with the nanobots already compromising so much of her system, it probably wouldn't be enough. We need to move now, he said, making the decision. There's no more time to prepare. Kira was barely conscious now, her eyes half closed and her breathing shallow. The musical quality of her voice had faded to barely a whisper, as she murmured something in her own language. Hiroshi wished desperately that they'd gotten that replacement translator working, but the technology was too complex to repair quickly. He touched her shoulder gently and her eyes focused on him with effort. We're starting now, he said slowly, clearly. It might hurt. It might feel strange, but you have to stay still, okay? Can you do that? She gave the tiniest nod, using what little energy she had left. Her hand moved weakly to grip the edge of the table again, preparing herself. Hiroshi positioned the pulse device carefully, using the real-time scans to guide him. The central hub of nanobots was located in a dangerous spot, right between her secondary heart and a major nerve cluster. If his aim was even slightly off, he could paralyze her or trigger a cardiac arrest. His hands were steady, though, years of precise laboratory work serving him well now when it mattered most. "Charging the pulse," he announced. The device hummed, building up energy. The sound seemed to fill the entire room, drowning out even the beeping of the monitors. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." The pulse was invisible, but its effect was immediate. Kira's body went rigid on the table, her back arching as every muscle contracted at once. The lights under her skin flared brilliantly bright, so intense that everyone in the room had to shield their eyes. Alarms blared as her vital signs spiked dangerously. "Compensate," Hiroshi shouted, and the team sprang into action. They'd prepared for this, setting up equipment to support her organs if the pulse caused disruption. One technician managed her respiratory system while another monitored her hearts, ready to intervene if either one stopped. On the monitors, the cluster of nanobots near her secondary heart flickered and went dark. Success. The central hub was down, but the other nanobots scattered throughout her body were still active, still moving, still dangerous. Hiroshi's heart sank. They weren't shutting down automatically like he'd hoped. "They must have a backup protocol," Tanaka said, reading his expression. "The other nanobots are operating independently now." But then something unexpected happened. Kira's body started to glow brighter, and this time it wasn't from the pulse. Her own biology was responding, fighting back. The patterns on her arms that had been flashing red in distress shifted to a brilliant white, and waves of energy pulsed out from her core. On the monitors, they watched as her immune system, finally freed from the central control suppressing it, launched a full attack on the invading nanobots. "She's fighting them herself," one of the scientists in the observation room said in awe. "Her body knows they're foreign now that the control signal is gone." It was like watching a microscopic war play out in real time. Kira's cells surrounded each nanobot, breaking them down, neutralizing them one by one. But it was taking a massive toll on her body. Her hearts were beating erratically, struggling to keep up with the energy demands. Her temperature was spiking and dropping unpredictably. "We need to support her through this," Hiroshi said urgently. "Her body is doing the work, but it's burning through her resources too fast." He started administering a combination of nutrients and synthesized compounds based on their analysis of her biology. It was guesswork. Educated guesswork, but guesswork nonetheless, trying to give her body the fuel it needed to complete this fight. Minutes crawled by like hours. Kira's vital signs swung wildly as her body waged war on the nanobots. Several times alarms indicated she was going into shock, and the team had to intervene to stabilize her. Hiroshi found himself talking to her constantly, even though he wasn't sure she could hear him, telling her to hold on, to keep fighting, that she was doing amazing. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the monitor showed the nanobot count dropping to 0. The last of the invading machines had been destroyed or rendered inert. Kira's body stopped glowing so intensely, the light under her skin settling into a steady, healthy pulse. Her vital signs began to stabilize and the frantic alarms quieted one by one. "She did it," Tanaka said quietly, something like wonder in her usually professional voice. "She actually did it." Hiroshi slumped against the table, exhaustion hitting him all at once now that the immediate crisis was over. Kira was breathing easier now, her face peaceful as she slipped into what the monitors indicated was normal sleep for her species, rather than unconsciousness. The purple flush was completely gone from her skin, replaced by a healthy silver glow. In the observation room, the scientists erupted in applause. They'd just witnessed something incredible. Not just the medical procedure, but Kira's own fierce will to survive. She'd fought her way across space to escape whoever had done this to her, crashed on an alien world, suffered through a catastrophic miscommunication, and then trusted complete strangers to save her life. And she'd won. 3 weeks later, Hiroshi walked into the recovery room to find Kira sitting up in bed, actually laughing at something playing on the tablet they'd given her. She'd discovered Earth comedy shows, and apparently, physical humor was funny across species because she'd been binge-watching slapstick compilations for days. "You're looking much better," he said, smiling. And she really was. Her skin had returned to that beautiful luminescent silver, and the patterns on her arms glowed a peaceful blue-green. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost while sick, and there was life in her violet eyes again. Hiroshi. She beamed at him, her English much improved now. They'd finally gotten a working translator, but Kira insisted on practicing English anyway. She said she wanted to understand humans properly, without any machines between them. After the disaster with the first translator, Hiroshi couldn't blame her. Look at this video. This man, he slips on a banana. A banana! Why do humans leave fruit on the ground? It is very dangerous. He laughed and sat down in the chair next to her bed. It's not something we actually do. It's just comedy. Exaggeration for humor. Oh. She tilted her head, considering this. So humans don't really put bananas on ground to make other humans fall? No, definitely not. That is relief. I was beginning to think humans were very strange. She paused, then grinned. Well, stranger than I already thought. They'd had many conversations like this over her recovery. Kira was endlessly curious about Earth, about humans, about everything, and in turn she'd shared stories about her own world, a place that sounded both beautiful and tragic. She came from a planet called Aurelia, where her people lived in cities that floated on clouds and communicated through colors and light as much as through sound. But there was a war there, a civil war between different factions with different ideas about how their society should function. The group that had captured Kira wanted complete control, wanted to use those nanobots to create an army of people who couldn't resist or think for themselves. Kira had been a teacher before, someone who educated young people about history and freedom. That made her dangerous to them, so they'd tried to turn her into something she wasn't. Have you thought about what you want to do now? Hiroshi asked carefully. This was a conversation they'd been avoiding, but it needed to happen eventually. Now that you're better, I mean. Kira's expression became serious and she set the tablet aside. I cannot go home. Not while they are still in power. They will find me again. Put more of those things inside me. Or worse. She looked down at her hands, her glow dimming slightly with sadness. But I'm refugee here, stranger on strange world. What can I do? Actually, Tanaka said, walking into the room with a folder under her arm. She'd been visiting regularly too, checking on Kira's progress both medically and diplomatically. I wanted to talk to you both about that. She sat down and opened the folder, showing them official-looking documents with lots of stamps and signatures. The United Nations has been very interested in your case, Kira. They want to offer you asylum. Formal protection. You'd be the first recognized alien refugee on Earth. Kira's eyes went wide. Really, they would do this? But why? I am nobody. You're not nobody, Hiroshi said firmly. And more than that, your presence here proves that there's life beyond Earth. Intelligent, complex life. That changes everything for humanity. Of course they want to help you. Plus, Tanaka added with a slight smile, you've got a remarkable story. You've already become something of a celebrity. People are calling you brave. Inspirational. Kira blushed that familiar purple, though this time it was clearly from embarrassment of the good kind, rather than mortification. I just wanted to not die. That is not brave. That is normal. Surviving what you survived? That's extraordinary, Hiroshi said. He'd read the detailed reports of what those nanobots had been doing to her. She should have died days before she even reached Earth. The fact that she'd held on long enough to get help was a testament to her sheer willpower. There's more, Tanaka continued. If you accept asylum, we'd like you to work with us. Be a liaison, help us understand your people and your culture. And, she glanced at Hiroshi. Dr. Hiroshi has specifically requested you as a research partner, studying comparative biology and cultural exchange. Hiroshi felt his face heat up. Only if you want to, of course. No pressure. I just thought, since we work well together and you're interested in learning about Earth anyway. Kira was quiet for a moment, and Hiroshi worried they'd overwhelmed her. But then she started laughing, that musical sound that reminded him of wind chimes. You remember first night, yes? When translator broke? How could I forget? Hiroshi groaned, covering his face with his hands. I'm still sorry about that. I think about it sometimes, Kira admitted, her purple blush deepening. In my language, what translator said to me, it was very, inappropriate? Very personal thing. I thought you were a very strange human with no manners. She giggled. But then I learned you were trying to save my life with medical scan and I was the one being silly. You weren't silly, Tanaka said diplomatically. It was a genuine translation error in a high-stress situation. Could have happened to anyone. Maybe, Kira agreed. But it is funny now, yes? We tell this story someday, and people will laugh. This is how first human and Aurelian became friends, through most embarrassing misunderstanding in galaxy. Is that what we are? Hiroshi asked, suddenly shy. Friends? Kira reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were still cool, but not the icy cold of that first night. This was her normal temperature, he'd learned. You saved my life when you could have been afraid of me. You trusted me when I had nothing to offer. Yes, Hiroshi. We are friends. Maybe first friends between our worlds, but not last, I think. Over the following months, that prediction proved true. Kira's presence on Earth opened doors that humanity hadn't even known existed. She taught them about her people, about other species she'd encountered, about technologies and ideas that seemed like magic, but were just science humans hadn't discovered yet. And in return, Earth became her home, a place where she was safe and valued and free. She and Hiroshi did become research partners, publishing papers together that revolutionized multiple scientific fields. They spent countless hours in the lab, studying everything from comparative biology to theoretical physics, from cultural anthropology to linguistics. And yes, they told the story of their disastrous first meeting to anyone who would listen, laughing together at how something so mortifying had become the foundation of an interstellar friendship. Sometimes, late at night when they were both working too late again, Kira would look at Hiroshi and say, you know, if Translator had worked properly that night, maybe I would not have trusted you. Maybe I would have been too proud to accept help from strangers. Are you saying I should thank the broken translator? Hiroshi would reply, smiling. Maybe little bit, yes, Kira would agree. After all, it brought us here. To this moment. To friendship and alliance between worlds. Not bad result for one small misunderstanding. I think, and looking around at everything they'd built together, at the foundation for peaceful contact between species, at proof that understanding could bridge any gap. Even ones between worlds, Hiroshi had to agree. What started with the most heart-stopping, face-flushing, utterly mortifying miscommunication imaginable had become something beautiful, something that would echo across the stars for generations to come. Not bad for one very long, very strange night in a research facility. Not bad at all.